What is good, everyone? It's your girl, PrimaDiva. Since Pokemon Sword and Shield were announced, everybody just wants to know more, especially about the legendaries that we've yet to see. With names such as Sword and Shield, the legendary duo is bound to have some connection with this. But how exactly, and what will these legendaries be based on? There's been a lot of speculation going around, and people are quite convinced that these legendaries must be based on something that has connections to the UK. However, I don't think it's necessarily needed for these legendaries to be UK inspired. The legendaries of Kalos were certainly not French inspired, they were based on Norse mythology, specifically the Tree of Life. So this means that the legendaries of Sword and Shield could almost be anything, but I'm sure you clicked on this video to see what I think. Well, I think these legendaries are going to be based on two wolves from Norse mythology, children of the fearful wolf Fenrir, called Hati and Skull. These two wolves were used by Odin to chase and destroy the sun and moon, ultimately causing Ragnarok, an apocalypse and the end of the world. Now, I won't get into all the details of the lore because my theory or story is going to be loosely based on a lot of things, which I'll try to explain as I go along. After all, I've never written anything like this, so it probably won't be the most mind-blowing thing ever, just something that I want to share with you all, nothing more. Plus, I could be completely wrong about everything, and the legendaries could show up in a trailer anytime, even right after this is uploaded. Either way, let's get into my theory/story. First, let's cover the legendaries. Legends say that there is a Pokemon strong enough to pierce through anything. Few have seen it, but those who have felt a cinch throughout their entire bodies. This is the Sword legendary, a steel and fire type that has the mightiest weapon of all, the sharpest sword that can cut through anything, designed by the gods themselves. Legends also speak of a Pokemon that cannot be defeated, a Pokemon that strength can protect anything. The few who have seen this Pokemon felt a cold and chilling presence. This is the Shield legendary, a steel and ice type Pokemon that has the mightiest defense of all, the strongest shield made from the toughest materials the gods ever made. They are both set to slumber in ancient temples and must never be awakened without the other, as order would turn into chaos and disaster would strike the land. 3 winters in a row will happen, and that isn't the worst of it. After those horrible cold winters, natural disasters will occur all over the region. Everything will go dark and cold, and life as we know it would slowly cease to exist. If one of these were to wake up without the other, the balance would be upset heavily, causing basically Pokemon's version of Ragnarok. Now, of course we need an evil team that in some way interacts with the legendaries, and I think I came up with a pretty good idea. So my idea is to have 2 opposing armies, one that represents defense and the other that represents offense, called the Aegis and the Slash army. Aegis means defend or shield, while Slash means, well, slashing. It's obviously based on Aegislash, the Pokemon both of the leaders have. They both want to do best by their country, in this case Galar, but they only focus on just one thing. With every good villain there should be a sympathetic quality to them, a part you can understand and relate to. So these armies aren't necessarily evil, they want to do what they think is best for their country, however, their ideologies are quite flawed. The leaders behind the armies are 2 women that used to be friends that cared about each other. They even had the same starter, which was a Honedge. But their ideologies on what's best always clashed. They studied together at the same academy, but eventually, due to their ideals clashing more and more, they split up. At first they became rivals, but then they became sworn enemies. They are so convinced that their way is the right way that they have no intention to ever compromise with one another. Slowly through their strong words, they started to get more popular and recruited soldiers, who then slowly became 2 opposite armies that fight for control over the Galar region. The people of the region are aware of this, but don't care to stop it since it's mostly just political in the beginning of the game. People don't want to give up their way of living, and they don't think that political choices made in the country affects them that much. Similarly to a lot of people in the real world. Okay, so now I'll basically go into what I think the story will be. Now, none of this will probably happen, but I just really wanted to tell you all about it. So treat it kind of like a fanfiction, I suppose. The story begins fairly basic. You're a trainer who wants to earn their 8 badges to defeat the champion, and all that good stuff. It's made clear to you that there's a political war happening in the shadows pretty early on, but none of the characters around you think it's a big deal and they just shrug it off. Over the course of the story, starting around after you complete your first gym, you encounter either the Aegis army or the Slash army. The Aegis army when you have Sword version, and vice versa. They then request a battle from you to test your strength. The Aegis army has mostly defensive Pokemon and tactics, whereas the Slash army has mostly offensive Pokemon and tactics. After you beat them, they then congratulate you on your strength and ask you to join them when you're older. They also talk bad about the opposite army and tell you that they're dangerous and you need to stay away from them at all costs. As you progress through your journey, you gradually start to see more soldiers around the region. They mostly seem to be doing their own thing in the background, but they also block entrances and routes that you're not supposed to enter yet. Later on, you find some soldiers trying to steal some people's food supply. It is then revealed that the army sometimes steals people's food supplies to then later give it back to them by saying they caught the robbers. They do this to gain the trust of the people and climb the political ladder higher to gain more power. After you hear this, they battle you again to keep your mouth shut, but you win and they say that they'll be back later. As with every opposing team, or in this case army, in Pokemon games, you fight them every now and then, but then you come into contact with the leader, who has their second in command with her, a person that strongly believes in the ideology of their leader and doesn't allow people to disrespect her. They say that you've been disrespecting her the entire game, and they won't take it anymore, and they tell you to prepare for battle. You win, and they grovel in shame, asking the leader for forgiveness, which the leader does quite easily. Let's just say that the second in command is kind of a drama queen. The leader tells you that she values your strength, and asks you to personally join her army and become a high-ranking soldier. You naturally refuse, which she doesn't like. She storms off along with her second in command. Before she's gone, she tells you it's best to reconsider before it's too late, and that she has big plans for this region. You should be around 5 badges right now, and have battled a bunch of army soldiers. People of the region are starting to pay more attention to the army, as their political power is starting to have influence on the region. Most of the time, you're just stopping soldiers from doing their manipulation on the people of the region, and slowly the people of the region are starting to dislike the army more and more. Eventually, it's almost time for the climax. The army is desperately trying to get the trust of the people back, but the people just won't budge. Word comes around an ancient temple has been looted. People say that they've been seeing soldiers stealing old artifacts and manuscripts. You try to stop them, but then the second in command tries to stop you again, saying you've been troubling their army for too long and it's time to stop you once and for all. You win, but the soldiers get away with the manuscripts and artifacts, unfortunately. Then, the second in command tells you that they will not let you ruin their leader's plan, and promises to even put their life on the line to make sure it succeeds. Then, they leave. After your 7th badge, you come outside and feel coldness around you. The characters inform you that the army has moved into the deep mountains to awake a Pokemon that has been asleep for thousands of years. They beg you to go in and stop the army, and tell you that waking up that Pokemon will bring catastrophe on everyone, including the army. You fight your way through the entrance through dozens of soldiers, but eventually are met with a seemingly endless amount of soldiers storming through the mountains to stop anyone from interfering. Your Pokemon are weak, and you're about to give up, but then, out of nowhere, the gym leaders, characters from your journey, and even townspeople show up to help you finally put an end to the army. They heal your Pokemon and give you encouraging words. They will not let the army come in your way of stopping this once and for all, and throw out all their Pokeballs for one final epic showdown. As you reach the top, you see the leader, but before you can come even close to reaching her, the second in command rushes you, filled with hate. They tell you that they'll stop you once and for all, and will never let the leader's dreams die. After you beat them, they drop to the ground with nothing else to say but to apologize to their leader. But the leader smiles and says you can't possibly win anymore, holding a manuscript in her hand. You then notice a giant sign, either of a shield and sword version, or of a sword and shield version, on the floor behind her. A cutscene is played. Winds are blowing all around you. You hear the sound of metal clashing loudly coming from within the sign. A huge flashing light appears from within the sign. The opposing legendary of your version has been summoned. Its cry is heard throughout the entire region. Snow begins to fall all around the region. And now the leader finally explains her plan to you. She tells you that the country has fallen to greed, and that the people in command of the region don't care about it anymore, as long as they can have a full belly. Both the opposing leaders want to use the legendary Pokemon for their own wishes. The Slash leader's plan is to completely get rid of all power and rules and laws within the country, so the people can be free to do whatever they want. However, with some type of punishment or enforcement in regards to crimes, the region will be in total chaos. The leader, however, refuses to listen to reason and can only think of the positive aspects to it. The Aegis leader's plan is to take control of the entire region and control it as much as possible, including the people. She thinks she can protect everyone with rules they have to follow, stripping away most, if not all, forms of freedom, and with no freedom, there is no happiness. She also refuses to listen to reason, and only thinks about how she could better protect everyone. Both of the leaders have good points. Freedom and certain rules set in place are important, however, you need to have both to have a functioning society. You can't have one without the other. The leader tells you you cannot get near the legendary Pokemon whatsoever. She pulls out her Pokeballs and faces you. You win, but even though her Pokemon are out cold, she refuses to acknowledge her defeat. She then forces the legendary Pokemon to create a huge storm around her and itself, and before you know it, she's gone. You are then approached by the leader of the opposing army. She tells you that time is running short, and the region's safety is on a time limit. What both the leaders didn't know is that if you only summon one of these legendaries, the region will fall to an apocalypse. You need both to have perfect balance, and the opposing leader finally knows this and admits to you that she was wrong the entire time. She begs you to help stop her old friend. It is revealed they used to be best friends from childhood to adulthood, but stopped after their ideologies clashed too much. You are told you can only stop this one way, which is to summon the other legendary, your version's legendary. So you start your quest throughout the journey to collect ancient manuscripts and old artifacts, to summon the legendary of your own version to stop this madness once and for all. There's not much fighting involved, as the army has been mostly burned out by fighting the people of the region, but there are some interesting caves that you need to traverse through that are filled with high-level Pokemon and puzzles you'll need to solve. Over time, as you progress throughout the region to fix everything, the region gets colder and colder. It's the calm before the storm, before the apocalypse. Eventually you go through the mountain where the legendary is sleeping. You have all the things you need to awaken it. Be sure to buy a lot of Pokeballs and save before entering the final area, where the summoning will begin. The leader of your version will do the summoning ritual while you wait and prepare yourself for an epic battle. The sign is placed and the ritual begins, and a cutscene plays. Again, you hear the winds blowing all around, and you hear the sound of metal clashing, and a huge flashing light that is the same as your version's color emits from the sign. Its cry can be heard screeching throughout the entire region, and it appears in front of you. The battle begins, and it's a long, difficult one. The legendary has a low capture rate, and you almost run out of your Ultra Balls, until you're down to your very last one. You throw it and see the ball shake 3 times until it finally stops. Congratulations! You've captured the legendary, but it's not over yet. You've still got to save the region and stop the opposing army from gaining rule. You hear a shrieking cry from the other legendary coming from the inside of the royal castle. You rush towards the castle to find the entire place empty. You sprint towards the top of the castle, and there she is, the leader smiling maliciously along with the other legendary standing next to her. She tells you that this is the final confrontation to determine whose ideals are better. She grabs one of her Pokeballs and throws out her starter Pokemon, Aegislash. You throw out your starter too, and the battle begins. One after another, you take out her Pokemon, and she takes out one of yours. It's a neck-on-neck battle. With the last of her Pokemon being knocked out, she loses. But she has one more trick up her sleeve. She commands her legendary to rush at you. You think it's almost over until one of your Pokeballs shake, and your legendary protects you. The entire region begins to shake, and thunder and snow all fall upon the region at the same time. This is it. This is the final confrontation. Your legendary against hers. Her legendary gets a boost in strength or defense, and you have to use all of the skills you've learned throughout your entire journey. Right now, this is the moment you've been training for. Go forth, trainer, and save the region. The battle lasts long and it's difficult. Every time you think you're getting close to winning, the other legendary strikes you just as hard. But after a long time of battling, you come out on top and barely win. The other legendary is down. It comes to its senses and respects you for helping it out of its control. It goes back to its own place, but this time awake to await your return. The leader is on the ground on her knees. She's unsure why she lost. She said she wanted the best for the people of the region. That's all she ever wanted. The opposing leader comes to her and tells her she was overcome with thirst for power, and that it is not too late to do good for the people of Galar. The leader apologizes and finally realizes that now she was wrong. The opposing leader helps her get up and brings her back home. The region's climate returns to normal and the shaking stops. You're greeted with a nice warm sun. Your journey isn't over yet. There's still the 8th badge and the Elite Four, but you'll get there in time. Phew, so that was a really long story, huh? This was my first ever real written theory / story video, so I hope you all liked it. I know it probably wasn't as good as more popular PokeTubers make them to be, but I'll get there eventually. Right now is a good start, I think. I know this theory most likely isn't true, but I just wanted to create my own idea of what I think would be cool to see in Pokemon Sword and Shield. As always, tell me what you think in the comments and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more Pokemon Sword and Shield content in the future, and ring that little bell so you can keep up with whatever I post. With that being said, I hope y'all have a good day, night, or morning, and as always, take care.